First Name Basis podcast, where we chat with special guests, industry leaders, and TribalScale employees to have an authentic but a very informal conversation on a variety of relevant tech and innovation topics. I'm your host, Sheetal Jaitley, founder and CEO of TribalScale. I should be able to say my own company name by now. And I'm chatting with Saroop Bharwani, from the founder and CEO of SensoAI. Saroop, welcome to the pod, man.
Thanks, Sheetal. Good seeing you. And firstly, man, congrats on being named the hottest company by Fast Company. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, dude, we got this award. We're on the Fast Company 100 list for the top workplaces for innovators to go work. And I love it because all I chat about is the future all the time. And that's innovation and where we're going, which brings me to you. Just some background for our listeners. I've known Saroop for well over a decade now. Been following his amazing journey as an entrepreneur and what he's been doing in the AI space for a very, very long time. So Saroop, give us a little background on yourself. Tell the users a little bit about yourself.
Yep. No, thanks, Sheetal, and thanks for having me. This is fantastic. I love what you're doing here. I've been thinking about AI for quite some time right now. Ever since like way back when I was in university, I did a degree in computer science and neuropsychology. And I was always interested in terms of the correlation and the patterns between the human brain and machines. And that led me to a career in sort of, product management around building AI products. And I started a company around this in 2017, where it really focused on building custom AI models. And I put together a team of data scientists and engineers to really kind of drive innovation from a predictive analytics perspective, starting in the financial services industry and enterprises. And it's really just been such a good evolution from there.
I was lucky enough to have you in our offices. You guys sat right beside me every day. And I gotta say, I hear a lot of enterprises talk about AI, and they take this crazy waterfall approach. And it was awesome to watch you build a company live with working with clients, do it in a very agile way, and build product to market really fast, really quick, with meaningful insights that are actually actionable, that we're saving your financial institutions from a ton of churn. And as we know, cost of acquisition in that segment, especially for all of our financial services clients who listen to the pod, no, it's super expensive. And it was, one of the things right away, just off the top, I think a lesson learned is you can be agile and can be nimble and you can start small and make very, very big impact when it comes to enterprise.
Yeah. I mean, Sheetal, man, a lot of those lessons just came from being around your staff and your employees and yourself, just pair programming and just agile development, just being in that environment. But creating AI products is very different from creating mobile apps. So,
absolutely,
back when we started the company, we were developing our own frameworks and just talking to other startups about their approaches. And, Senso 1.0 was really about building custom models for financial services. But we actually got access to GPT's API about a year and a half ago. So we've been building on it for a while, and it just opened our minds to new use cases and new areas that productivity and cost savings and revenue generation can be unlocked. And I got to say, building on top of something like GPT's API is very different than the custom models we were building. And it's super exciting time, and everybody's thinking about AI now. But one of the things we should talk about is the product management framework around building AI products. It's certainly an exciting field that's developing.
For sure. Well, let's get there. But the one thing I wanted to touch on is, ChatGPT came out late last year, open for the public. Everybody was like, "Oh my God, here we go!" It seems like every day there's 200 new releases. That I've never seen this speed of innovation happen so quickly. You've been working with this for a long time now, and you're considered a veteran if you've been working with GPT for well over a year. What are some of the things that are impressive to you that have come out of this generative AI? And it's not necessarily just GPT. We got Bard. We got another one that was just released yesterday. I know there's so much competition in the space, but talk to us a little bit about what you've seen in this quick year that's been the evolution of generative AI.
Yeah, and so what I think happened on November 30th, 2022 is AI actually became useful then. And all of a sudden, there was an absolute surge of demand created in the general public of people like really being able to kind of use something like ChatGPT or Bard or Claude, as you're referring to,
Mhm.
and just get like a remarkable, magical feeling that makes them want more. And I think that triggered this surge, right? That's kind of what it did. But these capabilities and leveraging the GPT API, that existed before November 30th, right? It's just that everybody's mind is exploded right now, and the surge of sort of rapid development and just inspiring developers to build on top of it is just like go, right? And it's accelerating rapidly on a daily basis right now, right? Across many industries, many use cases. This is like a general purpose technology, kind of like electricity. That's kind of the analogy I commonly use.
It's so good. I use Bard actually just this morning, and we got a dinner that we're hosting here in Miami for innovators and founders, and it was very obviously very impromptu, something that came up just like a couple of days ago, and we said, hey, let's do it on Thursday night. And I made Bard do everything, like figure out the menu, figure out who to order it from, how to get it catered, do everything for me. It was just
Yeah.
like I put in a couple of prompts, boom, it was done. And it was something that like used to take us planning and all this stuff to do. And we were just like, oh, there you go, dinner's ready. We're gonna go have a good time tomorrow night.
And it's getting better daily. Like, again, talking about what developers are doing in the back end, what product managers are doing in the back end, they're iterating and making this better. So if something doesn't work one day, it may work next week and the week after that. So the surge of speed of innovation here and accelerating like capabilities is just mind blowing.
So let's go a little bit into financial services organizations. You got a lot of experience there. These are large enterprises. These aren't enterprises who can afford to experiment and F up. How should they be thinking about it? What are they? What are your clients saying? You already got a ton of clients in this space. Talk to me of what enterprises, someone who is working at a financial services organization now has a new toolbox, which is generative AI, widely available to them. How should they think about it? What should they be doing?
Yeah, no, great
What are you
question.
seeing? What are you seeing? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll start with like broad enterprise and then I'll go into financial services. So broad
Okay.
enterprise, and you know this better than anyone, it's really kind of like two sides of the organization. The people that just want to use cool tools to get stuff done, and the other side of the organization that really focuses on data privacy and protection of employees and their clients, right? And that's constantly like, a tug of war going on, right? And there's no difference like here, right? So you got to consider like, yes, everybody wants to get the rewards of using Bard or GPT in the enterprise, but the data they put into those interfaces, could very well be used in, whatever ways outside of that organization. So that tug of war is constantly happening. In financial services in particular, because of all the rules around, consumer protection and, data privacy and everything, this gets like to another extreme because there's like certain regulations, especially in the US, that really come down hard on institutions that don't follow these. So it really is coming up with a risk reward framework, which I communicate to all my clients and prospective clients on how to think about really starting with low stakes use cases that just get the organization going. Think like low risk, like sort of things that are just going to drive.
But low stake doesn't necessarily mean high, like it doesn't mean low impact. Low stake can be high impact if you do a 2x2 with it. You can have very low stake and high impact in all the
100%.
business.
That's ideal. But what I communicate to these financial institutions is like just build momentum in your organization. Even if it's not the highest impact sort of use case to begin with, just start invigorating and inspiring your staff. Because
Give me an example. Give me an example.
Yeah.
Let's talk real life stuff. Let's stop the
100%.
fluff. Let's get into a real life example.
Yeah.
Low stakes, high impact.
So one of the things that if you think about the day-to-day in enterprise of like retrieving documents, it's friction. There's so much friction around that, right?
Okay, nobody knows where to go look. Where are you going to go in this SharePoint or whatever drive you got? You got no idea where things are.
So let's say you're someone in customer service and you're on the phone with a client and they have a request that you have no idea what the answers to. Typically, you would have to kind of go to your SharePoint. Hopefully you don't forget your password and you're on Wi-Fi. And you have to kind of scroll through a bunch of folders to find the document, and then you need to scroll through
I'm the
hundreds of
consumer
pages
on
of
hold,
documents to
ready to
find that
kill someone.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly,
I'm
right?
on hold for like 10 minutes wondering what is this person doing?
And that friction usually causes a call center representative or someone in branch to call someone in the organization. Again, client is on hold. And that takes maybe 5 to 7 minutes because back office or lending, they're receiving
Mhm.
so many calls. Think about how that accumulates day to day, week to week, year to year. How much like dollars are being like spent on like that 5 to 7 minutes on average per consumer that's on hold, right? And what this technology is able to do for that particular use case is enable for like a quite a large subset of calls today that are being put on hold to unlock that knowledge instantly on the spot so you don't have to keep that client on hold. And that's
And
a
it can be
massive cost
contextual, right? It
savings
can
in the
be actually,
organization.
it'll actually be contextual to my account, to my actual problem set that I've brought to that customer success, customer service representative.
100% personalized to that particular individual in that particular department for that particular product.
Are you seeing that then the evolution of that becomes more the chat friendly bots and like, hey, I don't even need, like, if I authenticate and I go in, I don't even need to talk to someone. I could just 24/7 have a live agent be able to help me.
That's where this is all going. Like, and I said this
Is anyone there yet?
I'd say on the consumer side, I'd say that there are systems like Inflection, not AI. Like I don't know if you used it in Inflection, but if you go to like Inflection's website and you use Pi, their chatbot, it feels like you're talking to a live human being. But that's about day-to-day stuff, advice, checking the
Mhm.
weather, things like that. But in enterprise, like that really hasn't been adopted even at scale. Like it hasn't been adopted there. And I think we're going to see that in the next like 6 to 12 months. My belief is in the next like 2 to 5 years, we talked about that maybe sooner, is the world's going to have access to broad-based intelligence at their fingertips, a chief of staff by our sides in enterprise, in our professions and our personal lives. And that's what we're all working towards here. That's a super exciting time. It's a scary time too, Sheetal, but we got to think about both sides.
Well, I mean, this is something that, again, if I'm in the enterprise, and I know a lot of our listeners are enterprise clients, this is something that we could start doing tomorrow. Like this, you don't have to wait the 2 to 5 year horizon. This is low stakes, not really going into your systems and causing a bunch of governance and regulatory issues. This is low
Nope.
stakes, high impact that can happen tomorrow. You can flip the
Yep.
switch.
I
Not
tell all of
necessarily
our
flick the switch, go with the right strategy, develop, and make this happen within a quarter as opposed to a couple of years.
when I talk to any one of my prospects or customers, it's like I can get you onboarded in a week, right? Because the data we're
Wow. Okay,
consuming
so I'm
is low
talking months. You
stakes.
even brought that down. Let's get you
No, on
onboarded. Off we
average,
go in a week.
yeah. Because the reason we took that approach, Sheetal, is because I'll tell you, like the individuals in the credit union that are using this today are thinking about their jobs different, and they're more excited. It makes them think about new ideas and want to do more. And that's a powerful feeling coming from your staff.
That's awesome. You were talking a little bit earlier about product management. So talk to me a little bit of product management framework. How are you going to leverage that using generative AI?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, I'm speaking about this in context of enterprise. If you're an enterprise and you want to kind of embed this in your workflow, sure, you can kind of use ChatGPT and Bard as your interface, but that's like just the scratching the surface. And of course,
So
organizations have
before
to
you go
be.
on, what do you think of these organizations that are banning it all over the place?
So I speak to enterprises about this regularly. I don't think blocking is the right thing to do here because this is so easily accessible on an employee's mobile device. There's nothing stopping them from actually going on their mobile device to actually query something and enter sensitive information. So an organization not knowing what their employees are doing outside versus having oversight and visibility is a bigger risk, right? So I encourage not blocking. Instead, coming up with, yep.
I went to Starbucks the other day, and 2 out of the 3 laptop screens that I glanced over on had ChatGPT open up half screen.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, whether you want it or not, it's going to happen.
100%. I mean, the iOS app is just so easy to access, right? So people are going to do it nevertheless, and not only in enterprise, but in schools too, right?
Very, very cool. Okay, sorry, I took you off track. Let's get back to
No,
your product management framework here.
Yeah. So most organizations right now that I do my just engagements with, it's basically, we're using ChatGPT, we're using Bard, and we're super excited about it. But all of them are now that it's been like 7 months, since ChatGPT, they're starting to think about how do we actually embed this in our workflows. And that's where like the GPT API comes in, right? Or,
Mhm.
Google's API. There's many language models you can use, right? And when you look at like when you use the API, there's a number of considerations you got to make in order to ensure two things. And this is a trade off. You got to have the best user experience and you got to manage
Mhm.
your cost, right? Some organizations aren't going to care about cost and they're just going to go straight to GPT-4, right? And GPT-4 is probably 30 to 60x more expensive than GPT 3.5, right? So there is a huge cost implication
And
there. But when you think about,
just for our listeners to understand, there's GPT 3.5, there's GPT-4, and it is exponentially by the thousand. GPT-4 is exponentially by the 1,000x more powerful, correct?
it's the rumors are out right now that it's been trained on 1.2 trillion parameters, which is like like just to put things in perspective, like Google's model and GPT 3.5, it's like half a trillion parameters. Like this is exponentially bigger, and the model is much more effective at reasoning and various other capabilities.
Wow. Okay. So
Yep.
very, very big difference.
Yep. So, cost is one thing to keep in consideration, but every enterprise is thinking right now, like, obviously these, models hallucinate sometimes, especially if you're
Mhm.
using something like 3.5. And one of the big fears in enterprise is how do we kind of put this in front of like our clients or even internal staff and trust that it's providing the right answer. So quality of response is another thing. Reliability, is the model going to time out? And then speed, right? So GPT-4 versus GPT 3.5, the speed is a little bit different. So as a product manager developing apps, you got to consider these trade-offs and start to understand how you approach implementing. And then you got to select the use case. And
Yeah.
again, we talked about high reward, low stakes being the ideal, but that may not always be the case.
Gotcha. So we're getting into like the product mindset, the AI strategy per se. What are the key considerations that enterprises should keep in mind when building the strategy?
Yep. And I alluded to this before, but it starts at high level, kind of like understanding the risks and the rewards. So let's start with the rewards. The rewards is looking at your organization and understanding, where the inefficiencies lie. So we talked about, information retrieval being a huge bottleneck in every enterprise, right? And we
Mhm.
only talked about one, customer support. And I think it's like, every organization at the executive level should be, working with their staff to kind of like almost put together a list of priorities of use cases they can tackle and then focus on the ones that they can get going on as quickly as possible, right? So like what, and just again, there's hundreds of use cases, select one. And then what are the risks associated with that, right? Like how is our data being exposed, if at all, right? What is the potential for things like impersonation and deep fakes and things like that? So I think an
Right.
organization really has to look at that. And that's kind of what I help organizations think through on a daily basis, right? How do you think through kind of like just getting started? Because I'll tell you, Sheetal, a lot of these enterprises just don't know where to get started yet.
Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, if we talk about recent news just this morning, I saw Toby released the Shopify Sidekick. Here's a great
Yep.
example of if you're a Shopify customer, this is low stakes, high reward for you, where not only is it going to help you redo your site, it'll help you with your growth analytics. It'll probably take us, I'm hoping it's going to take a lot of entrepreneurs who may not know their best growth hacking way of being able to sell their products or services, leveraging Shopify, and show them new ways of how they can do it with high impact returns. And
100%. I just saw the video right before this call.
so
It
cool.
seems like super
Super
exciting.
cool.
100%. And again, it's a broad-based capabilities. It's not only searching your CAC LTV metrics, it's literally making changes to your website. It's pretty incredible. I think Toby's an incredible entrepreneur. And he's a
Absolutely.
builder too, right? So he gets it from the
Mhm.
bottoms up.
Yeah, and I mean, it's if you take a look at it, we're not just doing single focus. Hey, I'm on Saroop's Shopify store. I'm bringing in competitive analysis. I'm bringing in data from all over the market on what you need to do to be a better retailer on the site, which is just absolutely amazing. And
Mind-blowing.
for someone to go and do that even 2 years ago, you need a team, an army to go and do all this stuff. Now you have this little assistant within your Shopify store that's going to be able to help you do these things, which is super impactful. And again, it goes in, if we go back to the 2x2, very, very low risk.
Exactly, right? Like, and I mean, for a use case like that, it's like, you know, like low stakes and high reward. That's where you want, that's where everybody needs to be.
So let me go a little bit deeper here. We have enterprises have their data science teams, they have their AI teams that are there that are doing custom models, and they're trying to build custom models. How much of that customization needs to start to go away, because you can now build customization on top of these open platforms that are there? You know, I here at TribalScale, we spend a lot of time being like, hey, how do we bring more customization on top of ChatGPT or Bard to go and bring us to solve specific use cases for enterprises? I know you've already started building an amazing platform on top of GPT that you could that has out of the box functionality that GPT otherwise wouldn't have. But do you start from scratch and say, hey, I want to go and have everything proprietary, this is my own AI? Or now do you go out of the box and say, hey, I got a platform here out of the box that I build customization onto? These are two different ways of looking at it. What are you seeing in the market?
Yep. So this is really comes down to, you know, whether you're using a closed model or an open source model, right? And, you know, the open source community is on fire right now. Cheeto, like on fire. There's new things happening every single day. So the question is, you know, do you want to leverage a model like, you know, OpenAI's model or Google's model, where your data may be shared with them, not necessarily used for retraining, like, you know, according to OpenAI's terms of service, you know, any data sent via the API is purged after 30 days.
30 days, they crush it, right? It's like, hey, we're going to hold it for 30 days only for you. We're not going to use it to train our models. We're not going to share your data with anyone else. And after 30 days, you don't have access. We're going to cut out, we're going to delete it.
But not every organization is comfortable with that, despite what the terms of use says. So you know what, a open source model that's trained on your data is extremely viable. It may not be as effective as like GPT-4. The open source models are usually a generation behind, or maybe 2 generations behind in terms of capability. But for like simple use cases, non-general tasks, they can be very, very powerful. The issue comes down to an enterprise, you know, doing the training, maintaining, the version controlling, the evolution of that. And that's where an organization like TribalScale could come in and really provide those capabilities, right? And I definitely know there's going to be demand. So in summary, there's closed models and then there's open models. And I think like consulting firms like yourself and services firms can play both sides.
Okay. So I mean, obviously there's a pros and cons to both. Which brings me then to the talent. You know, AI talent is tough to find. However, leveraging these tools, I think the market's going to open up to more skilled talent in AI. What are you seeing? How are you seeing this growing demand being served?
I'm seeing a lot of engineers that don't necessarily have a specialty in AI, all of a sudden educating themselves on AI and what we're talking about here. And that's one good thing. There's just a natural kind of wave of like transition that's happening, not only with engineers, but like just broadly, people, product managers, etc. All the A players I talk to are all digging in deep. And learning about the stuff that we're talking about right now. So I think that the transition from one to the other is a natural wave of like kind of bringing new talent into the space. But look, finding talent to kind of, you know, train your own models and do the hard work under the hood, I think that's still scarce. But I think on the application layer, I think that's where like really anybody can get involved and start building apps on top of these foundational models. And that's where I live, and I think that's going to be an exciting area. I think that's an area that, you know, Tribal and Senso can potentially collaborate.
Absolutely. You know, as I talk to you, we always talk about like collaboration of like, hey, how are we going to leverage your AI? How are we going to AI people? How are we going to leverage our engineers? How are we going to leverage our subject matter experts, business leaders, how are we going to get this cross, and you mentioned this actually, like how are you going to get that cross-functional team to come together and actually create a high impact product? And that's the best way to do it, right? Because you're able to go and bring all these various people together who have the right domain knowledge to actually go and do things that would have taken years to go and do in 2021. And now we can, with the speed to market, we can actually go and we could do it small, we could test it and then roll it out larger, is the right roadmap of how to approach it.
And Cheeto, like, look, the best people, like the A players, want to work in organizations where they ship code fast, where they bring their ideas to life faster. And now with these tools, and I'd say,
I'll be honest though. We also have to cut through the noise. Let's be honest here. There's so many people who I know that were crypto experts that are pretending to be AI experts now. There's a lot of wish-wash. I'm going with the latest buzzword nonsense, but it's really important to evaluate your talent as to who's actually rolling up their sleeves and building things, as opposed to the ones that just go where the wind is blowing today. So that comes with a caveat for all of our listeners that, like, don't get boondoggled by a lot of the surface area type people. Get people who are actually digging in and building. And I tell everybody around me that if you want to go and experiment, you got to go and build. Like, go and be a builder. Go build something. It doesn't matter what it is, but bring that to the table.
100%, totally agree.
You know, we're coming up on time, and I want to be cognizant of that. But talk to me a little bit really quickly about like 10xing what your productivity is in your job. It doesn't matter what your job is. You don't necessarily have to be in the tech portion of it. You can be someone else. How do you where do you see the future going of, you know, generative AI and how it's going to affect everyone in their job positions?
Yeah, and look, we're talking specifically about language models, but where this is evolving is multimodal, right? And it's really, really kind of models that are able to work with, you know, images, text, audio, etc., all at once. And I think that these are really going to give us superpowers to create in ways that we've never even imagined before. And I think, again, when we have this chief of staff of our side, you know, whether you're a marketer wanting to put together an ad or a video, or a developer wanting to kind of like get a piece of a software, an agent to interact with the APIs or whatever the case may be, these are things that are just becoming easier and easier and easier to use. Like, you know, you remember back to the early days of the internet and early days of mobile, it was very difficult to do things back then. But then we have all these tools and libraries that are built on top of each other. People are building applications. And I think it's just going to be a lot easier to feel like, frankly, like magicians. Right. And I'm super excited for that. I think everybody's going to have this, and everybody needs to develop the skill set in order to instruct these models to ensure that they get the most out of it. And I think that education really is, you know, start now. And there's a lot of resources out there that are starting to kind of like develop that anyone can learn that for free.
I love it. Like, and there's so many guides and stuff now out there that actually drop breadcrumbs for you, right? Like when everybody wanted to figure out mobile, it was important to like drop breadcrumbs so that people like, well, let's hold your hand and go and let's take you on this journey. But there's definitely a new world where productivity can really shine now. Saroop, we're running out of time here. I want to thank you for coming on the First Name Basis podcast, man. Always great chatting with you. I'm going to have you back again so we can like follow up here based on the feedback we get from our listeners. Check Saroop out at Senso.ai. Get in touch with him. He's an expert in this field. He's definitely on the bleeding edge of everything that's going on in this world. And First Name Basis podcast, you can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, YouTube, and other platforms. I guess we're pushing this everywhere. But thanks everyone for listening in. And Saroop, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Cheeto.